Okay, good morning. Going to give a brief overview of the programme, touch upon some of the past that has led to the programme actually commencing, and then hand over to Graham Hill, who will talk to you a little bit about what we're doing on Thames Tideway Tunnel to leverage the good work that's preceded us on NEC3, and talk about some of the arrangements we're putting in place with our main works contractors. Just going to kick off with a short film about the programme itself.
Click on the blue, that should work. Click on
I hate to break it to you, but everything we eat has to go somewhere. Yeah, I'm talking about poo. The average person has to go what? Like 365 times a year? That adds up to around 140 kilos of poo, which is more than double what I weigh, and that's just one person. Every day, London's sewer system has to deal with 1.25 billion kilos of poo. Most of the sewage gets treated at places like this. But there's a problem. The sewer system beneath our feet was designed when our city had a population of 2 million people. I mean, that's still quite a lot, but nothing compared to now. So when it rains, the system overflows, which is not good. If you imagine 8 billion toilets flushing straight into the Thames, that's how much ends up in the river every year. It's disgusting. And it's happening right now, right under our noses. Like here, at Blackfriars Bridge, where sewage can pour into the river at a rate of 50,000 kilos a second. It's just plain wrong. I mean, come on! London's one of the most impressive cities in the world. So you think someone will be doing something about this? And someone is. The Thames Tideway tunnel is going to be 16 miles long and take 7 years to build. It's massive. But when it's done, it'll take your poo directly to the sewage works and keep it out of the river for the next 100 years or so. Which means a cleaner environment for all of us, including the fish. And as London keeps getting bigger, we'll be protected, which is good. Because we're the ones who have to live it!
Okay, sorry if that's put anyone off their breakfast this morning, but okay, so in the spirit of talking about the past a little bit, just wanted to go into some of the history of London and this project itself. So back in the 1860s, unfortunately London, the population rapidly growing, and many of the streets and certainly the river network was really an open sewer network. This led to several health problems and led to a cholera epidemic with tens of thousands of people dying each and every year. And the problem got so severe that Parliament, obviously right on the river, actually decamped to leafy Oxford and gave an extraordinary engineer, Sir Joseph Bazalgette, in effect a blank cheque to go and fix the problem. And fix the problem he did. Bazalgette set off on his vision to clean up the city, and his solution is still very much the backbone of the system today, and will play a huge part in the system going forward. Absolutely built to last. I've had the dubious pleasure of going down into some of these sewers, and as an asset, 150 years on, they're actually immaculate. Absolutely nothing wrong. They're brick built, and they're built to last. So a little known fact, we think of London and rivers and everybody automatically just thinks of the Thames. However, there's still in existence a huge network, 21 tributaries of the Thames that flow under the streets of London today. Just some interesting facts given where we are. The brick for St Paul's Cathedral was delivered via the Fleet and the Fleet Wharf. And we've got Walbrook running under the city today. Over urbanisation and the constant development and building of London, many of these rivers are still flowing, but unbeknown to us, are now very far under the ground. So in terms of the solution, Bazalgette put in a huge and impressive network of sewers, in effect to intercept and stop the pollution of the river. He also had great foresight. So when building the solution in 1860, there was approximately 2 million people in London. So he future-proofed it for 4 million. Unfortunately, as we know today, and as any of you travelled in on the tube, we're rapidly growing as a city, in excess of 8 million today, and with huge growth projections over the future years. The solution would in effect capture sewerage, and it had a fail-safe mechanism that rather than discharging sewerage into the streets, it would actually take it through the interceptor chambers, through the tunnels, and then into the various rivers. Today, with the dense population of London, it only takes 2 millimetres of rainfall for the system to fully fill up and start to discharge raw sewerage into the Thames. That happens on average once a week, and last year over 55 million tonnes of raw sewerage entered the Thames untreated. Just to have a look at what that looks like. The design of many of the overflows was ingenious, and Bazalgette actually built a number of the London bridges at the same time and built the overflow into the bridges, so they often go unnoticed. So pretty unpleasant stuff. In effect, there are two key problems here that we need to resolve. Firstly, overloaded sewage treatment works, and secondly, a network with constant discharges directly into the River Thames. There's three core solutions to fix this problem and return the Thames to the world-class river that it should be. First, the sewage upgrade works. Secondly, the Lead Tunnel, which I'll talk about a little bit more. And finally, the Thames Tideway Tunnel, which we're about to embark on now. Just to have a look at the scheme. So we've got the various sewage treatment works, predominantly located in the east of London. However, we've got Mogden in the west. We've got the Lead Tunnel, which is now completed tunnelling and should be ready for commissioning next year. And then the Thames Tideway Tunnel, which will complete the solution. Just talk about Lead Tunnel. It's very much our sister project, and we will in effect join up to the Lead Tunnel in the future. Great project out in the east. Some very, very deep tunnelling for London, up to 75 metres. And it was, in effect, actually the largest project that Thames Water have ever let, in excess of 600 million. The Thames Tideway Tunnel will, as I said, join up. Very similar to Crossrail, we have broken the package up into 3 core civils contracts. The West, Central and the East. In terms of the dimensions and the length, it's going to be 25 kilometres, a 7.2 metre internal diameter. So the little man there kind of puts that in perspective. You could fit 2 double-decker buses into one of these tunnels. And a huge capacity. And quite importantly, it is quite a dumb asset if you think about it. From the west to the east on a slight gradient, that gradient helps with self-cleansing and helps with the hydraulics of the tunnel. Just talk about some of the geology. You may notice if you look at a tube map, you've got most of the underground stations in the west. That's because you've got perfect tunnelling conditions in the west, good, nice London clay. And it gets kind of progressively more complex from an engineering perspective as you move out to the east and then you get into the chalk, which is particularly difficult and hard and must be treated before transportation. Okay, this is just to give you an indication of the typical kind of site setup. This is at one of our main drive sites. Generally, we'll be on site for approximately 6 years. So we have the various site setup, put us in preparation for the main drop shafts. Again, one of our key challenges, unlike the Lee Tunnel, is we're doing this right in the heart of central London. Got the digging out of the drop shaft. Can be anything up to 60 metres deep. That then allows us to crack on with the assembly of the TBM. And off it goes at a record-breaking progress. I mentioned we're in the heart of London, so we've got a number of noise restrictions, which our main works contractors will be scratching their heads at as I speak. So we leverage noise sheds, etc. Also, a fascinating aspect of the job is our commitment to use the river for logistics as much as possible. We've got Andy Mitchell who's joined the programme to lead the programme from Crossrail, and he's absolutely determined to wherever possible, take lorries off the roads of central London. Another interesting aspect is that the tunnel has a 120-year design life requirement, so that's the secondary lining going in. And also, we have a commitment to return these sites to the public, so there'll be landscaping, etc., following the main construction. So one of our key challenges is that we're in a very congested London, and although we're underground has started to get very busy as well. So a number of key interfaces with infrastructure, listed buildings, bridges, tube tunnels, etc. So it's going to be one of our challenges. And just to put it in perspective of tunnelling jobs in the UK, so you can see, firstly, we're kind of going under most other tunnelling jobs, and if you can combine us with the Lee Tunnel, it's a serious bit of tunnelling. I mentioned some of the legacy requirements. So this is, I'll show you, for example, this is Blackfriars today. So under Blackfriars, you can see there in the bottom corner how well hidden some of these overflows are. And that's really why there's kind of a lack of awareness of some of the overflows and some of the pollution. So that's Blackfriars today. And once we're finished, it will look something like that. So we're really kind of changing the landscape of London. And the reason for that is because we have to fit a huge amount of infrastructure under there, including the drop shafts and the storm tanks, etc. Okay, to give you an overview of the timelines. So we have our planning. It's got a very good consent, and we're off and running. We have our preferred bidders on the main works, and we're ready to sign those contracts and go into construction. I just wanted to mention another unique aspect of this job, this IP. That's an infrastructure provider, so this job will not be financed by Thames Water. We're in effect standing up a company which will be regulated with Ofwat in its own right. On day one will be bigger than some of the other water companies that are live today, with a multi-billion-pound injection. And that's been one of the real challenges, but also one of the very exciting things about this job, because it enables us to kind of have a blank sheet of paper and lay out and learn lessons from the Crossrails, etc., on how we want to deliver this job. So nice slides, but I know you love NEC3, so I'll hand over to Graham for that section.
Hey everybody, thank you very much. Isn't it amazing that we can start a keynote speech for an event like this talking about poo and making it appear relatively cool. That won a BAFTA actually, that film, so we're very proud of that. Yeah, I'm a little shorter than Niall, so I'll move that. Okay, it's a good point actually. What does this have to do with NEC? Really important for the programme. TTT is a programme. We're investing close to £4.2 billion worth of your money and my money into developing this programme. And the net impact of all of this is actually, when you bring it down to the bottom line, onto the bill payers for Thames Water. So as an organisation, we feel a responsibility to ensure that we can actually not just say that we're doing that, but show that we're doing that. That's a really important aspect for us. We've really been committed to that, and I've been with the programme a relatively short period of time, and Niall and others in the room have been here for a great deal longer, but it is in the fabric of the business and the way in which we want to approach things. And it's been there from the very beginning. Now, as a business we've created a set of value streams that we'll describe, that systematically run through everything we do, and we've been committed to that. And the key part for us really is that where those things are important, they're not just important at the beginning of the project, they become and remain important all the way through it. And those are behavioural aspects, there are safety aspects, but I'm going to talk about the behavioural piece because we see that as really key and very much aligned to the philosophy of NEC. It seems a little hackneyed, but we describe it as the Tideway. And it is important to us, and it's important as we onboard staff and as important as we onboard our contractors. And this really isn't about just an engineering project from a industry and an infrastructure point of view. You've seen from Niall's slides the impact of what we're doing to the river. And those that have heard Andy Mitchell speak quite passionately, and others who are on the exec of the business, is that it's about reconnecting such an important asset in London, the Thames, which we all take for granted. And I don't know, myself, if I walk down the river in the evening, it's an incredible place. It'd be nice to see it used more often, more frequently. And I think we can contribute to that. But it is a huge opportunity, and we're not ashamed to actually stand up and say that we want to learn and have learned and will continue to learn from other major infrastructure programs and from other people in the industry who have something that we can benefit from. So we spent a lot of time pre-acquisition getting into that world. We've hit a little sweet spot in the marketplace in terms of tunnelling, and we're not ashamed to admit that we know that we can benefit from that. There's some great contractors out there, people rolling off Crossrail, people rolling off Lee Tunnel. So that challenge to the industry to bring the best game is one that we'll continue all the way through this programme. And from an infrastructure industry point of view, it's important to us that we can show that these programs can deliver. They can deliver to program, and they can deliver to time, and they can deliver to budget. And we can do that in a less adversarial way than perhaps historically we've been able to achieve. And that has really been the constant theme all the way through. It's the only time I'll mention a clause in the contract, and I've highlighted this for very specific reasons, but the spirit of mutual trust and cooperation. Need that from the get-go, and that's what we're aiming to. Now, this doesn't happen by accident, and it requires exemplary behaviours on everyone involved in that. I think most people in this room know that, but within the industry, it's easy to say, it's much less easy to achieve. But that is something that we're trying to do. And again, I'll make no apology to reference people like Andy Mitchell, because that tone at the top, the behaviours that flow through our organisation that make it so important, are starting to actually disseminate through our contractors, through our staff, through our consultants, through everyone that helps us develop this programme. They're starting to get that. There are others that have said this quite a bit better than I have, but in terms of what's important to us, this is really the key to it, because we can all come together. The important thing is what we do at the end of all of this and the success that we deliver. He's got an interesting track record, but I thought that one summed it up probably a little bit better. You've seen the scope of the project from Niall's slides. In terms of the way in which we've created our contractual landscape, geographically, we have an alliance agreement that effectively is across all of the three areas that we're operating in. I'll come to some of the details of the alliance agreement. We have 3 main works contracts, all under an NEC3 option C, and they're all the same. Very, very minor differences that are very, very specific to each of the individual contracting areas, but not the contract itself. And then we have what's called a system integration contract, which is, if you like, the magic ingredient that makes all of the control systems for each of the tunnels work together. And again, that is PAN. But in terms of hierarchy, to an extent, that's effectively what we have, those 3 areas. Niall's mentioned that we have preferred bidders, and we're very, very close within a matter of weeks of signing these agreements. We talk about geographies, west, central and east, because that's the way in which the programme was led. The procurement was a win-one only. There wasn't anything that precluded anybody from bidding for all of them, but we didn't want a single contractor to take each of those areas. So we have B&B JV, we've got Flow, those of which may know Ferrovial Agriman, and in the east we have CVB, which is JV with Costing, Vinci, etc. So some quite big beasts in there, most of whom are pretty familiar with NEC, most of which have used it in one form or another for similar projects. But having done so doesn't necessarily mean you'll do it well. Behaviours are critical. Collaboration, we'll all hear about it. I'm sure you've all spoken about it before in your individual organisations. But for us, it's not something that can be applied selectively. And it must be more than just lip service. Vital that that becomes the case, because it is incredibly easy to say that we're going to act collaboratively. But when push comes to shove and you get into a difficult situation, as we often do, the nature of how we resolve it is really important. But it is enshrined in what we do, and it's been enshrined in the processes that have taken us to this point, which is really just the beginning of our journey in many respects. There's a bunch of stuff in here that I won't go through all of it, but the behavioural assessment part of this that formed part of the acquisition at the beginning and will continue to become part of what we do was an intrinsic building block. We didn't just want people to say that they knew how to operate with us. The basic clauses and how they're going to understand those will come through the training. But actually the reality of how you're going to act, how you're going to behave as an organisation, and what you're going to do to support the vision and the values that we as a client are seeking to deliver is a really important aspect of what we're doing. And it will continue to do that, and we will measure it, and we'll use real-time tools to actually see where we're at and whether we're keeping to our promises on both sides of that. We see that actually as a very positive thing, and we'll continue to ensure that we can develop that. And it will become part of the measures that we will use to reward our contractors and to actually incentivise them as we move forward through the programme. I'm sure most people will recognise this as how we may have described the way that we used to hold our contractors to account, how we go through our negotiations. We saw elements of that in the interesting play at the beginning there. For us, that's got to be parked, and it must remain that way. So in terms of where we develop both our understandings of our own agreement and also to develop a common level of understanding with our main works contractors and our consultants that are supporting us through this programme, what you see there in relation to that slide is absolutely anathema We recognise that we succeed and fail together. I've worked on a number of programs where people take great joy in the fight, and we don't want that fight. It's a waste of our resources and it's a waste of our energy. We want to enforce those contracts. That's absolutely fine. Enforcing is fine. No, perhaps it's too strong a word. Perhaps it's just uphold. I'm not entirely sure. You can debate that at length. But to do so predictably. And on major programs, that's quite difficult because of the scale, because of the numbers of people involved, because of the disparate experiences that are brought to bear in people's knowledge and levels of understanding about how to operate. But within the organisation, that's an important part of establishing for us a benchline about how to behave and what we expect from people, and also from our contractors. Recognising that clearing those obstacles and supporting the delivery piece. Quite often we see that the commercial aspects of a programme can become dominant and you forget what it is that you're trying to deliver. And for us, that's a nationally significant piece of infrastructure. To act proportionally, it's very easy to let emotion come into that. We're trying to ensure that we just maintain a very level, very professional approach all the way through all of the things that we're doing, and actually to be truly collaborative. I talked briefly earlier on about the alliance agreement, and there have been lots of alliance agreements, so in many respects you may all be saying, well, that's interesting, but it's not really anything new. I think there are some elements in this which are potentially groundbreaking, but they will require us to act with the right commercial behaviours, to seek that integration that's described here, and actually to use leadership and continue to use good leadership, that tone at the top that I was talking about before, to achieve that sort of performance. But we've designed an alliance agreement which has our funding partner, our infrastructure partner, and Thames Water, and the main contractors, and ourselves as TTT, as joint signatories for this alliance agreement. So everybody has a part to play in it. And it isn't just an agreement to play nicely, it has a pretty substantial capital sum linked to it. Now that exists to incentivise all of the parties in there, but it's in addition to the normal contractual incentivisation mechanisms. We've got a 50-50 pay and gain mechanism that exists on the agreement, but it's separate and distinct from that. And it is effectively a board which is controlled by all of the parties who will benefit from the programme being delivered successfully. It's to be established, and it's going to take time for us to very quickly work with our main works contractors, work with our infrastructure IP provider when they're announced shortly. But the key point is that that is in an area, you've seen from the contract landscape, we've got three big beasts, and they're all operating in slightly different areas geographically. We need them to work together so that the interfaces work, and we need them to work together so that the overall programme is delivered. And that's where the interfaces with Niall and the Programme Controls group become extremely important. The alliance agreement in some senses is designed to provide an overlap where there may be conflicting priorities. If Central needs to do something which potentially could affect East or West to the detriment of the programme, the alliance agreement is designed to provide that balance so that the best for the programme decisions can always be made. Challenging, for sure, but it's one that we're up for. Interesting how many times I've sat in major programmes talking about one version of the truth and seen probably 5 or 6. Hopefully, Niall and I will be the single version. That's our challenge in many respects. Again, no apologies for lots of learning from Crossrail, from TfL, from LU, from Lee Tunnel. There's a bunch of really interesting stuff there that suggests that we're data animals. We're very data rich in today's infrastructure environment. What we do with that is really very interesting, and often we ask for more of it than we really need. Key thing for us is that we're going to establish a common data environment, and it's an interface at contract and programme level which all of the partners to the business will have a visibility to. So our version of the performance, cost, time, quality, safety will actually be the same version that the contractors are buying into, because they will use the same environment for us. It's the shared environment through which we will manage the contract, and actually manage our program controls in EV. Clearly there will be small amounts of separation on some of the more sensitive commercial aspects, but beyond that, it's a common environment with visibility for all of the key parties who can benefit from it. We've chosen A-Site as a tool for our contract management. That's at the epicenter of our CDE environment. And it's in our view, it just aligns to that approach about openness and collaboration, to be able to have that data to make informed decisions and for those to be clear and unambiguous to all of those involved in it. So data at the right time, the right quality, we know that's vital, but it's almost a given in many respects in today's infrastructure world. But for us, the culture is building that from the beginning, actually using the building blocks, building the common data environment together with our main works contractors. This is about doing with, not them being done to. It's a really important aspect for us that we see as a change. Delivering the message across the programme, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because when you bring a programme like TTT together, it's almost like we're starting from scratch, but it's ironic because it's been going for many, many years. Colleagues from CH2M Hill have been working with Thames Water, have been on this for years and years while we get the consents together. Colleagues from other tunnelling programmes, consulting colleagues, everybody's worked in different environments, come to us with different knowledges, different experiences, particularly of NEC and what it means and how to operate it. But getting that consistency of what it means to work within TTT and to operate with those values and to deliver those values with our contractors so that we start this right is just a critical thing for us. So we've got a number of programs which are developing as we move through. We've got early contractor engagement. In fact, it's almost started before we were in contract. And these can become quite hackneyed phrases, and I know it's quite easy to become complacent about that. But for us to be able to ensure that everybody that working on our programme, whatever their level of understanding, be it expert practitioner or just having awareness, that we find some tools to do that. So we're working with industry, we're working with Glenn and some of his tools and techniques to be able to ensure that we actually have a good starting point, that our contractors have a common understanding that 2 + 2 does equal 4, and we've understood how to get to that equation, that the starting point is the same. Now, it will be naive to think we'll achieve that from the get-go, but it's an ambition that we've got, and it's one that all of our staff will go through, and through our early contractor engagement phase, which will be about 120 to 180 days, we'll actually work to achieve that level of understanding so that we start this right and we avoid some of the problems. And that's it. Thank you very much.